Hello, this is John Feldt, and this is the weekly water outlook for April 28th, 2013. Well, across most of the nation last week, it was a very quiet week. You can see a large part of the west and southwestern parts of the nation received no rain whatsoever. The more significant rain occurred from a very narrow band across southern Missouri into parts of Kentucky and Tennessee, also parts of Illinois and Indiana. That's the area in yellow is 2 inches or more. And the heaviest rain right along the Kentucky-Tennessee border, that was 5 inches right in that area right there. But if you look at the majority of the nation, it was definitely very dry. The red is well below normal precipitation, and just a few spots that I mentioned with the heavier rain that there's above normal, and that's that area of blue. So if we look at the past precipitation anomalies over the past 15 days, 30 days, 60 days, and 90, I think some of the more significant trends stand out. Now, if we look at the past 15 days, what we see here, that the southeast U.S. and the Midwest and parts of the Great Lakes have received above normal precipitation. That's the area in blue. And then over the southwest U.S., well below normal precipitation. But let's go out further. Let's look at the 90-day. Jump to the 90-day here. These will show if these trends are either short or longer term. Now, if we look at 90 days, we see that that area over the Midwest and Great Lakes is still showing up. And I think that's indicative that this has been a pattern that's been in place now for a month or so, and it's changing water resources, soil moisture in these regions. We also see a hint in the southeast U.S. as well of that trend continuing. Now, for the dry side, the southwest U.S. and part of the south, we continue to see that. So I think those are the three major trends that we've seen so far over the last 90 days. Midwest, rain and snow, upper Midwest, snow, and then the southeast U.S., more active showers and storms, and then dry conditions over the southwest and west. So this is where we stand as far as soil moisture goes. It's very wet over the middle part of the nation. The green are the areas that are very wet, and the dark green are actually areas that are getting pretty soggy, and they're a little bit more vulnerable towards runoff, perhaps flooding or agriculture issues. The southwest and anywhere west of this line, and take note, it's a very abrupt dividing line here. This is quite wet in this area, and this is quite dry in this area, and it's very abrupt as we go from wet to dry. This is sort of the transition zone right in the middle part of the nation. So right now we don't have too much as far as conditions just perfect. We're either leaning a little bit wet or definitely very dry. Now we have some significant flooding continuing across the nation. What we have are two flood events. These are separate flood events. The Midwest flood event on parts of the Mississippi, Illinois, and then parts of Indiana continues. Many of these rivers have crested and are beginning to come down, but flows will stay quite high for quite some time. This is due to rain that has occurred over the last month, and this is your main stem river flooding due to that rainfall. Now in the upper Midwest, this is your spring snowmelt rainfall, and snow has been melting fairly quickly over the Red River. As I've been saying pretty much all winter, that I expected that to be confined to a small area, but it could be significant, and it is confined to a very small area, but in that area, red is moderate flooding and purple is major flooding, and that is significant in a smaller section. So let's take a look at the severe weather across the nation. I'll show that from time to time now that we're in spring. Just sort of an FYI, green is hail, blue are wind events, and red are tornadoes. And you can see a very wide scattering across the country. There's really no clear area that has received much more than other areas. There is a fairly strong cluster over the eastern and mid-Atlantic states of wind events. And other than that, it's been pretty scattered across the nation, and no real clear-cut trends so far this spring. So the big picture this week, a very changeable pattern. Early this week, the jet stream is up to the north, and that's showing sort of a reflection of that positive Arctic oscillation. The jet stream has pulled well to the north, bringing some warmer temperatures over the southern U.S. But then by late in the week, it begins to dip again, and we get a closed low in the center part of the nation. And when we get one of these closed lows, that usually means to me showers, cooler, maybe some snow, sort of overall sort of dreary and dismal weather in the center of that area of low pressure. and maybe some enhanced precipitation over the areas in that southern part of the jet between the warmer air and the colder air as well. And this is the rainfall forecast, and you can see that right over the central part of the state, Iowa, associated with that upper low, rain and snow in surrounding areas, and then over the southeast U.S. In that boundary between the colder air and the warmer air. But look over the west, very little rain once again over the western part of the U.S., just very small pockets. And other than these two areas of action over the Midwest and southeast U.S., looks like a pretty quiet week elsewhere. So soil moisture changes are decreases. Brown are where soils are expected to get drier. Blue is where soils are expected to get wetter, and you can see those are clearly associated with the areas of precipitation that I mentioned. But much of the area, probably a good 70%, are expected to have reduced soil moisture due to either no rain or below normal precipitation. Now, I thought I'd take a look at some of the climate models just to sort of look at some hints for trends over the next couple weeks. And what I have here is this is week 1 and week 2. On this side are temperature forecasts. These are precipitation forecasts. What I wanted to point out here, at least this first week, are much cooler than normal temperatures over the middle part and the eastern U.S., much warmer temperatures over the west. Then as we get into week 2, generally not quite as extreme temperature contrast, but still lingering below normal temperatures right in this region. Now, as far as precipitation, this is the week I just talked about, but let's look at next week. It still looks like over the middle part of the nation here in the west, either normal or below normal precipitation, and maybe a bit more over the eastern part of the U.S. on week 2. Now, weeks 3 and 4, as far as precipitation, I don't see any really strong signals one way or the other. I don't see necessarily enhanced precipitation over the west, and I don't see necessarily any reduced precipitation over the middle part of the nation. So areas that are more susceptible to soggy grounds will probably see some modest improvement, but areas that are dry, very dry, such as the west and southwest U.S., will probably not see much improvement due to enhanced rainfall. So the takeaway points for this week's briefing: over the Midwest, showers, storms, and perhaps even snow over the Midwest under the upper low. Precipitation over the southeast U.S., but generally fairly moderate. And the flood situation will be continuing in those areas I spoke of, with snowmelt flooding across the North Dakota-Minnesota border, and also Midwest high flows and crests working downstream due to recent rain over the last month. Thanks for listening to this week's briefing. I will be updating this next week. I will be getting out my newsletter later this week that will be describing some of the big trends as far as precipitation patterns. So keep tuned and look for that newsletter. I'll be talking with you again next week.